Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Housing's Bureau of Community Engagement, Racial Equity Initiative, and Strategic Initiatives 2024's Technical Housing Program session this Thursday, September 14th, 2023. We will be commencing in a few moments to allow people to join today's presentation. Before we start today's presentation, we would like to review a few housekeeping rules. We will be recording this presentation. To avoid background feedback, please keep your mics muted during today's presentation. We will have a few Q&A sections in this presentation, and at that time, you can unmute yourself and ask a question or use the raise hands feature. We will not be taking any Q&A questions outside the designated sessions. You do not have to turn your camera on, but if you do, please turn off your camera if you step away. All questions must be sent to DOH Community Program at cityofchicago.org. We will be publishing the questions and answer in approximately 1 week of today's presentation. We will not be accepting questions in our personal emails or responding to any RFP questions sent to any DOH staff members directly. And there will be a 5-minute break after section 1 of today's presentation. For ease and understanding and making sure that everyone is on the same page, the following table of common acronyms that we'll be using during today's presentation. Additional acronyms will appear, and DOH has noted phrasings for those acronyms that will appear. Today's presentation will cover a lot of ground, including providing an overview of DOH's mission, vision, values, and available opportunity bids with the Department of Housing. The presentation will be split up into 3 main sections. After each main section, there will be an opportunity for a 5-minute question and answer section. At this time, you may unmute yourself or use the raise hand feature to be called on to speak. In total, there will be 3 separate Q&A question and answer in this section. Since we have a lot to cover today, we will not be able to respond to everyone's question. The information for the presentation will approximately 1 week from today's presentation. DOH will publish the presentation, slide decks, response to frequent questions online. All attendees will be emailed once the presentation is available online. The first section of today's presentation will be covering DOH's missions, visions, and values, RFP requirements, RFP applications, submissions, reviews, and a 5-minute question and answer session. We anticipate the first session to last approximately 40 minutes, including the question and answer section. Our next speaker will be Ms. Natasha Hamilton, Managing Director of the Solicitation team, which is the Community Engagement, Racial Equity, and Strategic Initiative Department.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Heather. So the Department of Housing's mission is to expand access and choice for residents to protect their right to quality homes that are safe, affordable, and healthy. So DOH accomplishes this work through equitable distribution of resources across all 77 community areas so that every Chicagoan can choose and remain in housing that is safe, affordable, and healthy. So this work is radical and it requires that we change and challenge systems. It also means that our actions must be situated in collective and collaborative efforts in order to fight historically racist lending practices and investment policies. It's also playing a deep role in stewarding local resistance to progress and deeply rooted patterns of segregation in our city. To do this work of public stewardship requires a commitment to building community wealth and housing and affirming that housing is a human right. So for more information about this, you can visit chicago.gov/housing. Next slide, please. The Bureau of Community Engagement, Racial Equity, and Strategic Initiatives is also known as CERESI, and it manages most of the Delegate Agency programs at DOH. It's also responsible for community engagement efforts, the Chicago Low-Income Housing Trust Fund, constituent services, and also liaises with other city departments and the Mayor's Office on strategic efforts. Our complete delegate agency portfolio is comprised of our our community development organizations, or CHODOs, our historic Chicago Bungalow Associations, the housing counseling centers, small accessible repairs for seniors, technical assistance citywide, and technical assistance community-wide. Next slide, please. So our team is comprised of the managing deputy, the program director, 2 program coordinators, and a program auditor. So starting from left to right, and I'll start with Esther Gutierrez, who is our program director. Moving on to project coordinator Whitney Houston, project coordinator Zuri Sugat, program auditor Lynn Stewart, and myself, Natasha Hamilton, is a managing deputy for community engagement and racial equity. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Gutierrez. I use the pronoun she, her, ella, and I'm the program director of the Delegate Agency Division here at the Department of Housing. Before we start the presentation, we want to provide important context to this request for funding proposal opportunity, as existing delegate agencies may be aware of a change in the structure. Please note, earlier this year, the City of Chicago's Office of Budget Management informed city departments the customary community development grant application cycle will not be released in 2023 for the 2024 through 2025 cycle. DOH was also made aware that any RFP DOH releases typically under this CDGA will be for 1 year only, or in other words, only for calendar year 2024. Therefore, DOH decided to move forward with its own RFP for 2024 for only select programs. So only select programs will be part of today's presentation and up for bid. For all other RFPs under DOH CERESI, DOH has decided to exercise its 1-year extension authority, meaning those programs will not be subject to fiscal year 2024 RFPs. Next slide, please. As a result, DOH has decided to release the following 3 programs: the Housing Counseling Centers, the Small Accessible Repair for Seniors, and the Technical Assistance Citywide program. Next slide. The following programs are not being included in this competitive bid opportunity, and instead, DOH will exercise its 1-year contractual right to extend the contract by an additional year. Those programs are CHODO, the Historic Chicago Bungalow Association, and TACM. Next slide. Up next, we will be covering general requests for funding proposal requirements applicable to all agencies applying for HCC, SARS, or TACIT. Next slide. To bring DOH's SORESI's programming into better alignment with DOH's mission, vision, and values, and to ensure better program standards, our Bureau has put in place several requirements that all agencies must adhere to. All organizations responding to this RFP will be subject to the following general requirements. Please note that we will cover a high-level overview of each requirement in the next few slides. Please make sure to review the full RFP for all requirements. First one is the alignment with DOH's mission, vision, values. 2, demonstrate collaborative work. 3, organizations must have internal processes to assist limited English proficient individuals and people living with disabilities. 4, all agencies will be assigned a DOH program manager to supervise their work. 5, there will be reporting requirements. 6, quality assurance and control requirements. 7, agencies must have sufficient staffing capacity to carry out the work. 8, all agencies will be subject to program audits. 9, all agencies must comply with laws, statutes, ordinances, and executive orders. And 10, lastly, all programs will need to meet a national or DOH objective. Next slide. All organizations submitting a bid must demonstrate alignment with DOH's mission, vision, and values. Organizations can demonstrate alignment through their responses to the application questions and providing important details on how your organization prioritizes housing equity for Chicagoans who have been historically marginalized by race, ethnicity, immigration status, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, arrest or conviction record, or income. To review DOH's completed mission, vision, and values statement, please visit chicago.gov/housing. Next slide. DOH seeks delegate agencies that engage with the community in various ways and listen to the community or client's needs. All organizations that become DOH delegate agencies are expected to work together with DOH and other DOH delegate agencies to address the various housing needs of Chicagoans. DOH can facilitate collaborative work through various approaches, including inviting DOH delegate agencies to committees and working groups, or hosting a training session for other DOH-funded delegate agencies. The goal of collaborative work is to enhance resources for Chicagoans. Next slide. 2 additional acronyms we will be consistently using moving forward are LEP for Limited English Proficient Individuals and PLWD for people living with disabilities. We do want to highlight that the present day RFP contains the acronym PWD. However, the presentation we are using PLWD instead. All DOH delegate agencies are expected to have a policy and process in place on how they accommodate limited English proficient individuals and people living with disabilities. A gentle reminder, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is a law with prohibitions against discrimination in service availability, accessibility, delivery, employment, and the administrative activities and responsibilities or organizations receiving federal financial assistance. So once again, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is the law. Next slide, please. After selected, delegate agencies will be assigned a DOH program manager or project coordinator. The assigned DOH staff member will be responsible for managing the day-to-day functions of the program, including scheduling recurring check-ins, setting goals, monitoring agency performance, and other tasks. They will work with your organization to request reporting documents, files related to your program, and it is expected that all organizations provide responses within a reasonable timeframe and submit requested documents that is being requested by your program manager or project coordinator. Next slide. For reporting, do note that delegate agencies are subject to periodic reports and must submit those reports in the method the city requests. Typically, DOH SORESI requests both qualitative and quantitative data quarterly and leverages Excel and Microsoft Forms to accomplish this. Only one program also uses an online system named enterprise case management, or ECM, to effectively work on the Small Accessible Repair Procedures program. DOH Ceresi intends to continue the use of ECM for the SARS program only. The reporting requirements and file requirements vary by program, and your assigned DOH staff member will inform your organization of the complete reporting requirements after the selection process. Next slide. As part of the Delegate Agency program model, DOH expects internal quality assurance and control procedures within each organization to ensure they effectively carry out every aspect of the program, from case management to reporting to compliance. Selected agencies must ensure they capture accurate data for the program and remain organized to ensure any program-related files are consistent throughout, regardless of who delivers the direct service. Moreover, organizations must take internal steps to produce complete and accurate information and data to the city. Under this opportunity, it is not acceptable to submit lower quality reports. Next slide. DOH Ceresi will review the responses to ensure your organization can carry out the proposed services. We will assess if your organization has adequate systems, internal processes, and procedures addressing hiring, recruitment, staff training plans, and business continuity. While we understand turnover in our industries, agencies are responsible for having an internal process to ensure the work under this contract can continue should the primary staff member leave the organization. Also, the city operates under a reimbursement model, meaning delegate agencies must submit invoices to the city for all work completed, and agencies should have sufficient cash flow to cover the costs while they wait for reimbursement. Next slide. Selected organizations under DOH Ceresi are subject to an annual program and financial audit. Under the contract, your organization acknowledges that the city may perform or cause to be performed various monitoring procedures relating to your award or awards of federal funds, including, but not limited to, any audit or reviews related to compliance with the grant requirements. More details about this can be found in your RFP, as there are additional factors such as the total amount of federal award dollars received and requirements for certain amounts received. Next slide. Do you note that delegate agencies are funded through various funding sources, and some of those funding sources are federal? Agencies are advised to read all the information in the funding sources section of the RFP and visit the listed links to become familiar with additional regulatory requirements for local, federal, and state funding. Note that some programs are subject to various regulations. For example, SARS is funded by the Community Development Block Grant and subject to the Department of Housing and Urban Development CDBG requirements with an overlay of State of Illinois and City of Chicago requirements. Next slide. DOH Ceresi programs are designed to meet either a HUD national objective or a DOH objective. For the available opportunities, the following objectives are being met. For HCC, it will be meeting a HUD CDBG national objective for limited clientele activities. For SARS, it will be meeting the HUD CDBG national objective for housing activities. And for TASIC, it will be meeting a DOH objective. The selected organizations will be reminded of these tracks once the onboarding process begins. Next slide. Up next, we will be discussing the RFP requirements that apply to all the organizations. Next. RFP sections. The RFPs for HCC, SARS, and TACIT each contain several sections, including criteria applicable to all three and sections only pertinent to the individual RFP. All interested organizations are advised to read the entire RFP carefully and work with the decision makers in your organization to determine if the requirements in this RFP are within the scope and ability of your organization. There are several sections, and we have listed a few key sections in the following slides. 1, general information. 2, key dates. 3, evaluation and selection criteria. 4, compliance with laws, statutes, ordinances, and executive orders. 5, insurance requirements. 6, section 3. 7, subrecipient financial accountability in federally funded programs. And 8, programs in the RFP and application questions. Next slide, please. Please keep the following in mind when applying. 1, submission of an RFP does not ensure that your organization will receive an award. 2, the city assumes no liability for costs incurred in submitting this application or for costs incurred in anticipation of receiving an award. 3, any award is conditional until there is an executed contract. 4, all payment of funds, as well as the terms and conditions of the grant agreement, will be subject to the appropriation and availability of funds, as well as the terms and conditions of the grant agreement. In other words, City Council must approve DOH's budget. 5, the city may reduce the compensation or terminate the agreement for a variety of reasons. Please again see the RFP for the full requirements. Next slide. Do you note that interested agencies are subject to a competitive bid process? Since the City of Chicago funds the programs, all organizations are expected to deliver services within and to Chicago residents. Please note that organizations with existing contracts with the city that are not in good standing will not be considered for new funding. Also, applicants with previous contract termination or have faced other severe findings will also not be considered. Next slide. The anticipated funding and program timeframe for HCC, SARS, and TACIT is expected to be January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024, with no second year of the budget or contract. DOH anticipates rejoining the previous CDGA cycle for the January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2026 funding year. Once we have more information on that cycle, and once we get the clearance to publish that information, we will send it out to our point of contact. Next slide. The table in this slide includes key dates related to this bid opportunity. To ensure we are all on the same page, the dates are as follows. 1, the DOH Ceresi RFP was released on September 8th. Our technical assistance session is being held right now. Our DOH Ceresi application closes promptly at noon on Thursday, September 28th. We are unable to accept any applications that will be even a minute late. Organizations will be notified if they were selected and what the award amount will be around November 2023. Again, this falls in time with our City Council budget hearing and the approval of our budget. 5, the program year will begin on January 1st, 2024. And the last key date is that contracts will be executed on January 1st, 2024 or thereapter. Of course, there's going to be additional steps to be completed on or before these dates, and we will notify all applicable agencies when appropriate or when more information is available. Next slide. Once the application window closes, DOH will start working towards completing a technical review of all applications. The technical review consists of DOH staff checking to ensure all required documents are uploaded, all questions have been responded to, and meet any certification requirements if the program requires it. For example, HGC requires HUD approval, and we will be checking to ensure agencies have the HUD approval before scoring. It is crucial that agencies meet all criteria listed in this RFP, have adequate systems in place, and to be able to carry out the program and required services under the allotted timeframe of 1 calendar year. Existing delegate agencies or those that were delegate agencies in the past 5 years are subject to additional review of their previous performance metrics. Next slide. For our evaluation committee for all applications, DOH will convene an evaluation committee comprised of City of Chicago staff. Members will be given a scoring rubric, the RFP applications, RFP questions, the documents uploaded by the agency, and a DOH-created reviewer's guide and scoring rubric to facilitate scoring. Members will be asked to score each application from 0 to 100 based on the scoring rubric, which we will cover in the next slide. All members will be given a deadline to complete their scores. After that, DOH Ceresi will tabulate all scores, review any applicable performance history, review for compliance, and confirm that agencies meet the requirements. A list of prospective delegate agencies will be shared with the commissioner, and the commissioner has the right to reject or recommend organizations that apply. Next slide. Note that all applications moving to the evaluation committee phase will be scored based on the following 5 sections. Please note the table includes the maximum points per section, and the scoring rubric can also be found in the RFP. So the 5 sections your organizations will be scored on is 1, strength of the proposed program, 2, organizational capacity and monitoring, 3, program quality and impact, 4, reasonable cost, budget justification, and leverage of funds, and 5, the overall response. Next slide. Please note that the City of Chicago reserves the right to reject applications for a variety of reasons. The reasons are listed in the RFP and includes 1, the organization submitted a non-compliant proposal. So for example, you submitted an application, but you're missing your required documents listed. 2, respondents has DOH or city department's performance-related concerns in the past 5 years. 3, the deadline for submission was missed. 4, the proposal topic was not aligned with the requirements of the RFP. 5, the budget was unrealistic. 6, respondents has insufficient staffing for the program. And 7, respondents' proposed work program does not meet DOH standards or is unrealistic. Next slide. Once again, we advise all applicants to review the entire RFP and provide thorough, accurate responses to the application questions. There are several sections in each application, and respondents are expected to provide responses to each section. And just on a technical note, the character limit for some of the narrative questions is 4,000 characters. And the sections are as follows: contact and organization information, organization overview, program summary, auditing requirements, location and geographic area served, work program, budget information, service provision, and organizational capacity. Next slide. Each application requires specific documents to be completed and uploaded. Review all attachments in the application to ensure you are following all upload instructions. There should be an upload instructions also available in the RFP. Do note that the required program documents vary by program, but in this slide, you will see some of the common requirements across all the 3 RFPs. For example, the liability insurance, your stamp certificate, financial statements, quality assurance and control procedures, board member identification, certificate of good standing from the state of Illinois, organizational charts, work program form, IRS determination letter, bylaws and articles of incorporation, up-to-date resumes, and the budget form. Next slide. In the next few slides, we will be providing a quick walkthrough on where to find the current bid opportunities for HCC, SARS, and TACIT. All RFPs must be accessed through the city's e-procurement website. For your convenience, the solicitation numbers for each opportunity are captured in the table on this slide. SARS, solicitation number 9724, HCC, solicitation number 9725, and Tacit, solicitation number 9726. Next slide. This screen contains the links to the vendor registration site, the vendor login site, and the current bids and solicitations page. Our tech assistant today, Erin Johnson, project manager, will be placing some of the links in the chat to help you to guide you through this very quick walkthrough of the slides. Up first is the vendor registration site. Heather, may you please click on the first link? Heather, may you please click on the link vendor registration, e-procurement, iSupplier. Link number 1, Heather.
You may need to unshare your presentation screen in order to toggle over to the website.
Seems like we're experiencing a few technical difficulties. So what we will be doing, of course, is we will be sharing the RFP submission important links, and of course, this entire presentation so you can navigate it. Seems like it is up now. So this specific website does have the vendor credentials for the city of Chicago. So if your organization is not registered as a vendor for the city, please review all the information in the first link and follow those instructions. We can now move on to the second link, the vendor login e-procurement iSupplier link. Heather, may you also click on that link and open it? While that's being done, the second link does take you to the main page for iSupplier, which is the portal to apply for this bid, and if selected, also request for reimbursement from the city. Only organizations who are vendors and have login credentials are able to apply. And now let's move on to the third link, current bids and solicitation opportunities. Heather, may you please also share the link, or Erin, if you are available. Once that comes up, the third is specifically to the current bid opportunities. It's a little bit difficult to navigate, but that orange button, e-procurement bid and solicitation opportunities, does take you to the landing page of our solicitations. And then you may have to toggle between it to be able to find the correct opportunity. Next slide, please. The image in the slide for the solicitations main page, which was just brought up on screen, is the image for where all the e-procurement and bid opportunities are available. From left to right, you'll be able to see important sections related to the RFP. If we can pull up that website again, please.
Sorry, which website, Esther?
The third link. Wonderful. So from left to right, you can see important sections related to finding the RFP, which includes the department name, solicitation number, and specification number. On the bottom right-hand side, you can find the navigation links to move to the next 10 opportunities. So you may have to navigate a little bit to find the 3 opportunities available right now. Next slide. While we're pulling up the slide again, we do want to thank everyone for listening to the first section of today's presentation that covers DOH's mission, vision, values, and RFP requirements. Please note, we will have 2 more sections in today's presentations covering more program-specific information for HCC, SARS, and TACIT. So once again, we're going to go through the more in-depth program elements in the next few sections. What we're going to do now is move to the first question and answer section, which will be a maximum of 5 minutes. Note that after this 5-minute section, we're going to have 2 more 5-minute Q&A sections. If you have any questions related to this section, please use the raise hand feature, come off mute, and ask your question. Another reminder, if we are unable to get to your question today, please make sure that you send us your questions via DOH Community Programs at cityofchicago.org. Any questions we cannot get to today, again, we will be publishing a frequently asked question on our website, hopefully within a week of today's presentation. If there are any questions, Aaron will keep time. And please come off mute.
The first person I have is Misty. So you should be able to unmute yourself now and ask your question.
Thank you so much. I don't have a question. Is my hand up? I will lower that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next person I have is Sylvia. You are now allowed to talk, so please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. If we have 2 programs funded under one stream, like say TACIT, do we just make separate bids? Does iSupplier let you make 2 separate bids, or how does that work?
Yes, for TACIT, you can't submit more than 1 application, and it does allow you to submit more than 1 bid.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I have Jeanette. You're now able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I couldn't see how you got to the RFP. Could you show again in iSupplier how that's done?
Sure. Aaron, would you be able to share your screen? It should be the 3rd link.
Mm-hmm.
And we will be sharing the direct links. Also, if you receive the email communication, it should take you to the solicitation. One of the links there does take you to the solicitation main page. So on the screen, you'll see the entire website. That orange button does take you to the main page. On the lower right-hand side, there is a Next 10 button. You'll start seeing the department name on the left-hand side. So for example, we see from the top, opportunity through the Department of Transportation. The one right after that is our certification process for CHOTO. We see some opportunities for DFSS. And then if you actually see the one right at the bottom, that's the Department of Housing HCC opportunity. You do have to be logged into your website with iSupplier credentials to be able to access it. Did that answer your question?
The next person whose hand up is Daryl. Daryl, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I actually have 2 questions. One is the committee that's reviewing the RFPs. Are those committee members selected from the public, or are they selected from the Department of Housing?
All evaluation committee members are going to be part and employees of the Department of Housing or another city department.
Okay. Second question is in regards to the RFP submission. I know it's due on the 28th of September, I believe. And you said it's not going to be. Will the website shut down at 12:01, or is that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, we are unable to, if for any reason anything submits after that specific time frame, we are unable to score that. So it's very important that every agency work diligently to avoid a last day submission.
The next question I have is from David. David, you're now allowed to unmute yourself, so feel free to unmute.
Yes, thank you. My question is whether any of the RFPs would extend to legal services for people in housing-related litigation or legal advice and representation to organizations like engaged in fair housing advocacy.
I would direct you to the tacit RFP, as that contains the categories, and we will go into more specifics in the following sections.
Okay, and then I think we only have one more question. Wei Ying, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. This is our last question for this section.
Thank you so much. I can find the RFP, but I don't add it. We cannot add the detail section. Can you show me a little bit about more?
It may be a situation in which you have to be logged into iSupplier. I will direct you to the customer service for iSupplier, and we can send out that information after this presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions we have, and we are at 5 minutes. You're on mute, Esther.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. We will be going to a very brief 5-minute break right now. Everyone, please come back at 11:51. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, from our very quick 5-minute break. Up next will be the actual more in-depth walkthrough of some of the topics for today that are part of the RFP opportunity, specifically HCC, SARFs, and CACIT. Up next, we have our project coordinator, Whitney, who will be covering the housing counseling centers and the small accessible repair for seniors details of the RFP. Take it away, Whitney.
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Houston, and I am a project coordinator with the City of Chicago for the Housing Counseling Centers Program and Small Accessible Repair for Seniors Program. In Section 2, we will be providing for the requirements for the HCC program, then moving forward with the SARFs program requirements, then taking a 5-minute question and answer session at the end of Section 2. We anticipate this section to last approximately 30 minutes, including question and answers. Next slide, please. Up first, we will discuss the Housing Counseling Centers Program, which is a program by the city available to nonprofit, HUD-approved housing counseling agencies only. Organizations that apply for this opportunity must either be directly approved by HUD or approved through a HUD intermediary to deliver housing counseling and education services. Additionally, all housing counseling activities reported under this program must be conducted by a HUD certified housing counselor. To be HUD certified, the staff member must be employed by a HUD approved housing counseling center, pass the HUD certification exam, and have their employment verified through FHA Connection. Please work with your HUD point of contact for more information on the HUD certification process. One of the key expectations of the HCC program is that all housing counselors must be able to address the entire cycle of home ownership, regardless of the type. The regulatory statute states the entire process of home ownership includes the decision to purchase a home, the selection and purchase of a home, issues arising during or affecting the period of ownership of a home, including refinancing, default, and foreclosure and other financial decisions, and the sale of other disposition of a home. Next slide, please. For HCC respondents may choose from the following topics to deliver education and counseling: financial management, pre-purchase, post-purchase, foreclosure avoidance, tenancy, and condo purchase. As a reminder, by federal statute, all HUD certified housing counselors must demonstrate competency in the 6 major areas covering housing counseling, which are financial management, property maintenance, responsibilities of home ownership and tenancy, fair housing laws and requirements, housing affordability, and avoidance of and responses to rental and mortgage delinquency, and avoidance of eviction and mortgage default. Please make sure to capture this type or types of counseling and education your organization will be providing through your program. As a reminder, by federal statute, all participating HUD-approved housing counseling agencies that offer group educational sessions must also offer individual counseling on the same topics covered in the group education sessions. Next slide, please. HUD has an available HUD Housing Counseling Handbook, which provides the legislative and programmatic requirements for the implementation of the housing counseling program. Under the HCC program, all housing counseling must be done in accordance with the HUD Housing Counseling Handbook. The first bullet point of this slide contains a link to the HUD Housing Counseling Handbook, which is available through the HUD Exchange. Please refer to the Housing Counseling Handbook for complete guidelines on how to deliver housing counseling and education services and the requirements for each service.
To quickly highlight a few requirements for housing counseling activities to be within compliance, all cases must go through an intake process, have an action plan, undergo a financial analysis, case notes, clients' documents related to their financial situation, disclosures, and outcomes. For HCC, we allow for activity to be in person, online, or via telephone. Per the HUD Housing Counseling Handbook, alternative settings are allowed. However, all participating agencies that provide services directly must offer and provide in-person counseling to clients that prefer this format. Next slide, please. On this slide, we are providing a table of a very high-level overview of each counseling topic. Please make sure you are referring to the RFP for the full requirements for each topic, including expected outcomes and performance measures. As a reminder, all housing counselors are expected to be knowledgeable in all aspects of housing counseling, along with expected to understand the full cycle of home ownership. Up first, financial management counseling can be a variety of topics such as budget and credit. However, it is important to note that this activity is intended to be separate, standalone activity from pre-purchase, post-purchase, foreclosure, tenancy, or condo counseling activity. Next, we have a pre-purchase activity, which is for individuals who intend to purchase a home. We also have the post-purchase counseling, which is for individuals who are existing homeowners and are not in delinquent or at risk of being delinquent. If a homeowner is delinquent or at risk of delinquency for any reason, such as being late on property taxes or homeowner association fees, then those clients should be provided services under foreclosure avoidance, also known as foreclosure prevention, or resolving this matter or preventing a mortgage delinquent or default. This year, we are happy to include tenancy, aka rental counseling, to the housing counseling program. For rental counseling, DOH is seeking organizations that can assist current or prospective tenants to find affordable units or help the client understand their right as a tenant. We are also adding condo purchasing, which is intended to be a separate activity from traditional pre-purchase counseling, which can help condo buyers understand the complexities of purchasing a condo. Next slide, please. In this slide, we will highlight the minimum duration requirements for each educational group activity for each topic. For condo, financial management, foreclosure avoidance, tenancy, and post-purchase, all education delivered must be a minimum of 90 minutes. Under HCC, pre-purchase or home buyer education can be an 8-hour workshop or a 6-hour workshop, following with 2 hours of individual counseling. Next slide, please. The HCC program is set to meet the national HUD objective for limited clientele activity. Under this track, at least 51% of clients served must be low to moderate income persons. As part of the reporting process, DOH will be collecting client-level data to ensure agencies complied with 51% requirement. Organizations must stay organized and collect client-level data in order to be successful under the HCC program. Next slide, please. Up next, we will be discussing the program requirements for the Small Accessible for Seniors program. The SARS program is a construction-based program with heavy case management requirements, along with firm, local, state, and federal compliance requirements. Because the SARS program is a high-volume program, make sure your organization reviews the full program requirements in an RFP to determine if this program is a good fit for your organization. Next slide, please. DOH is seeking to fund several non-profit SARS delegate agencies to provide minor rehabilitation and maintenance services to senior homeowners in Chicago. There are 3 primary goals of the SARS program, which is to promote independent living, promote safe and secure homes, and promote accessible home entry. Most homeowners who need services under the SARS program are heavily concentrated in the south and west side of Chicago. Therefore, as part of the RFP requirements, DOH expects all respondents selected for the program to be able to provide services to all 77 community areas. Next slide, please. In this slide, we are including a table which provides some examples of the differences between maintenance and rehabilitation. This table is not intended to be an exhaustive list, so please visit the available link located on the lower right-hand side, which takes you to a link providing additional examples of maintenance versus rehabilitation. Next slide, please. The SARS program is federally funded using CDBG funding. CDBG funds are restrictive, meaning only select activities are allowed under the program for reimbursement. In this slide and the next, we will have included an abbreviated version of allowed activities under CDBG and explanation. Example of costs is existing structures, aka such as a heating and cooling system. Example of security devices, such as efficient use of water, water-saving faucets, shower heads, doors, locks, and keys. Next slide, please. In this slide, we are continuing the eligible activities for the SARS program, which once again is funded by CDBG. For more information on allowed CDBG activities for rehabilitation activities, please visit the HUD Exchange CDBG section. On the lower right-hand side of the slide, we have linked Chapter 4 Housing Activities of the Basically CDBG book. Next slide, please. There are 3 distinct program models under SARS. Organizations applying to SARS must indicate in their application which track or tracks they are using. Note, the options differentiate between single and 2 to 4 unit properties. Option 1, the organization will be using qualified construction staff for repairs and improvements to single unit properties. Option 2, the organization contracts with licensed subcontractors for the repairs and improvements for single unit properties. Option 3, the respondent contracts with either in-house or licensed subcontractors for repairs and improvements, both single unit and 2 to 4 unit properties. This option will have a procurement requirement to maintain separate budgets for single unit and multi-unit work. In other words, the organization can carry out SARS-related activities to both single unit and 2 to 4 unit properties. Next slide, please. The eligibility criteria for the SARS program has been updated to make sure your organization is reviewing the application in its entirety. To be eligible for SARS, the homeowner must be 60 years or older at the time of application, must own their home as their primary and only residence, must be a property that meets the listed property criteria, cannot be in foreclosure or in existing delinquency status, must be at or below 80% of the area median income, and cannot owe money to the city as confirmed by a scofflaw check, and have documented evidence of age, income, and ownership. Next slide, please. Under the SARS program, senior homeowners are eligible for up to $15,000 in repairs, pending the scope of services fall within the program and CDBG guidelines. DOH will maintain a centralized waiting list and distribute clients to agencies based on several factors, which may include location and agency capacity. All SARS agencies are expected to maintain accurate client case files in digital or physical format and will have to use the city-approved platform, ECM. For SARS program budgets, DOH is adding additional guidance, which is 40% of the budget must be used for a combination of materials and supplies and home improvements to existing buildings. Moreover, since the SARS program is federally funded through the city, additional compliance concerns will apply, including scofflaw review, environmental reviews, and lead abatement requirements. Lastly, to ensure seniors receive the assistance they need, respondents cannot reduce the assistance to senior homeowners to avoid additional compliance measures such as Davis-Bacon. Additional standard operating procedures will be shared during the onboarding process. It is imperative that agencies follow all required steps to be shared, as agencies that operate out of compliance and outside of the delivered structure are subject to not have the cost reimbursed due to non-compliance. Next slide, please. Once again, the SARS program is CDBG funded and will be meeting HUD's national objective for housing activities. Under this requirement, all households who are provided services must be low to moderate income households. This means that all agencies will be required to calculate income and verify household income through obtaining client income documents from all members of the household 18 and over. Please see the RFP for income calculation requirements. Any household that does not meet the criteria, even if it is by a few dollars, cannot be provided services. Agencies who mistakenly provide SARF services to someone above the income limits will not be reimbursed for the activity. Next slide, please. Now, we will have 5 minutes of question and answers. Are there any questions regarding the HCC program or the Small Accessible for Repairs program?
Okay, I have a couple of hands up. So Chris, you're first up. You've been allowed to unmute yourself, so feel free to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Thank you. My question's with regards to Davis-Bacon and then the prevailing wage rate. I mean, assuming that does not apply to the SARS program this year?
The Davis-Bacon rate still applies to the SARS program, but we will be able to flag it a little bit more in the RFP frequently asked questions as far as the requirements up under Davis-Bacon and how it will affect the SARS program going forward.
I would like to add additional context. Illinois prevailing wage does not apply when it's homeowner repairs.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Next question, please.
Next, I have Jonathan. You are able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Are employee salaries considered among the 40% for the program that must go towards repairs?
Employee salaries are usually listed as line 1 for the personnel budget. The 40% is on the additional lines on the home improvements and for existing buildings, and the line for materials and supplies.
Okay. Follow-up question. For the $15,000 per homeowner, that includes materials and labor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
Next I have, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, is Hinkyul. You've now been unmuted and you can ask your question.
Thank you, Erin. Good morning. This is a HCC RFP question. Our agency has experience in all 6 HCC topics, but we're considering which topics to prioritize in order to successfully deliver all of the minimum performance requirements. Do you have any expectations or guidance on how many topics of the 6 you are expecting ideal candidates of the grant to cover?
If you have the capacity to perform all 6 topics, you are free to apply for all 6 topics. If you are selected, the program requirements will be given to you then as far as meeting for those specific topics. So if you have the capacity to do all 6, apply for all 6. But if you do not feel as if you have the capacity, you do not have to apply for all 6.
Gotcha. As a follow-up to that, we're considering the capacity to deliver all or some, but if we are to deliver just some of the topics, are there any that are more preferred, or should we go by expertise? Is there any guidance on that?
You should Go ahead, Esther.
Sorry, we don't have additional guidance on that. We really want organizations to apply under the tracks they feel stronger. However, there are 2 new opportunities, which we are, of course, interested in, and that is rental counseling and condo counseling.
Gotcha, thank you. And just one more question. The foreclosure group education does not include a minimum number of workshops in the program expectations. Is there a minimum, or is it just any that you can do within the year?
If you are selected, you will be told how many workshops and attendees that you have to service within the program year.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Next question.
Okay, and our last question for this section is Misty. Misty, okay, here we go. Misty, you've been able to unmute.
Okay, my question is about the SARS program options, the option 1, the option 2, and the option 3. The option 3 has a requirement to maintain separate budgets for single unit and multi-unit work. What does that mean? Are we submitting separate budgets, or?
What that will mean, for the application, please submit 1, but if selected, what will happen with your contract is you will have to complete 2 separate budgets. One specifically estimating the amount for the single unit repairs, and then the second one for the multi-unit repairs. But for the application process, please just complete the budget template that is within the application.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
That is all the questions that I see for now in this section. And we are at 5 minutes.
Okay, our next speaker will Ms. Zuri Suga.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zuri Sogat. I'm a project coordinator with the City of Chicago for the Technical Assistance Citywide program, the Community Housing Development Organizations, the Historic Chicago Bungalow Association, and the Technical Assistance Community programs. In Section 3, we're going to be covering all of the requirements for the Technical Assistance Citywide program, also known as TACIT. Afterwards, we're going to have our 3rd question and answer session, followed by a closing of today's technical assistance presentation. As a reminder, if we're unable to get to your question today, we will be publishing all the questions and answers received on DOH's website approximately 1 week from today's presentation. Next slide, please. The Department of Housing is seeking organizations that can provide a wide variety of services under the TACIT program model. Agencies who are applying for the TACIT program may apply to 1 or more of the topics that are available under this opportunity. If your organization intends to apply for more than 1 program, please submit an application for each program. Additionally, please make sure you are also uploading the correct information under each application. Please note, if applicable, if you are a current technical assistance community-wide delegate agency that is applying for the TACIT program, you can only be a part of the citywide program or the community program, but not both. All of the TACIT options are open to nonprofit organizations, with limited exceptions of a few topics also being open to nonpartisan research institutions and Chicago-based for-profit organizations. Please review the RFP carefully, as each topic lists what type of organizations are eligible for that specific opportunity. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, we're going to cover a few of the new activities available in this year's TACIT RFP. For fiscal year 2024, there are 11 eligible activities for the Technical Assistance Citywide program. These activities are supportive housing services and advocacy for marginalized people, user-centered design and data strategy technical assistance, legal eviction or foreclosure defense services, tenant rights and responsibilities, landlord rights and responsibilities, tenant and landlord matters, estate planning, climate change, environmental justice and housing, equitable transit-oriented development, affordable requirements ordinance or ARO, the troubled building initiatives, supportive services or TBI. It's imperative that all applicants clearly notate which eligible activity they're applying to. Now we're going to break down a few of the requirements for some of these eligible activities. Next slide, please. The first eligible activity is supportive housing services and advocacy for marginalized people. The Department of Housing is looking for a nonprofit organization with a proven track record for providing housing-related services, information, or advocacy specifically for Chicagoans marginalized by race, ethnicity, immigration status, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, income, or arrest and/or conviction history. The required assistance includes providing application assistance for other services that aid in avoiding housing instability or providing direct supportive services. The award is for services rendered or administrative costs. Unfortunately, this is not a subsidy program. Please see the full RFP for eligibility criteria. Next slide, please. The second eligible activity is for user-centered design and data strategy technical assistance. DOH is seeking a nonprofit organization, a nonpartisan research institution, or a Chicago-based for-profit organization that is able to provide support to DOH programs in both data strategy and creating applications, forms, and workflows that are resident-centric and improve the user experiences of accessing housing services. Some tasks can include creating process maps, facilitating resident focus groups, working with the public sector or nonprofits to simplify application approval processes, providing training to staff in web forms and applications, establishing data reporting best practices, and training and program evaluation analytical methods. Next slide, please. The eighth eligible activity under the TACIT program is related to climate change, environmental justice, and housing. The goal of this track is to have an organization to support DOH programs in strategy and building curricula related to climate change, environmental justice, and housing. In order for an organization to be eligible for this track, the respondent must have a proven track record of working with public and private entities and in addressing climate change and environmental justice, supporting property owners and tenants in taking advantage of federal, state, and local climate-related programs, and providing technical assistance to organizations on environmental justice and climate resiliency. Here, the support to DOH includes building and maintaining interactive tools related to climate change, energy efficiency, decarbonization, resilient or sustainable buildings, and providing technical assistance to environmental or housing nonprofit organizations or a task force related to climate resiliency, environmental justice, or transportation equity. Next slide, please. The ninth eligible activity is for nonprofit organizations, nonpartisan research institutions, or Chicago-based for-profit organizations able to support DOH programs in building a strategy and curriculum to advance the equitable transit-oriented development, or ETOD. ETOD is a citywide policy framework that prioritizes creating healthy, walkable, vibrant communities connected to transit and all of its benefits. ETOD support includes creating and maintaining interactive tools for embedding ETOD principles and programs, such as educating the development community, community organizations, and community members on making use of city ordinances and programs relevant to ETOD. Additional tasks can include providing technical assistance to environmental groups, housing nonprofit organizations, or task force related to climate resiliency, environmental justice, and transportation equity. Next slide, please. The 10th eligible activity is for nonprofit organizations, nonpartisan research institutions, or Chicago-based for-profit organizations able to provide Chicagoans housing-related technical assistance, education, problem-solving, and resources on the city's inclusionary housing program, the Affordable Requirements Ordinance, or ARO. We're looking for entities that are subject matter experts in the ARO affirmative, fair, Fair Housing Marketing and Tenant Screening Plan rules, the ARO tenant application, income requirements, and approval process. Additionally, they must provide affordable housing-focused solutions and services to low to moderate income renters. Agencies will assist with ongoing technical support, including but not limited to trainings, workshops, webinars, community events, and meetings to inform Chicagoans about how to access available ARO units by type, location, and income, and subsequently assist them with the application process. Next slide, please. The 11th eligible activity is for a nonprofit organization that is able to support DOH's TBI program, the Troubled Initiatives Supportive Services, and have a proven track record of assisting individuals facing housing instability. The selected awardee will provide relocation services for court-ordered and emergency vacates, which includes assisting TBI receivers and court-ordered vacates specific to dangerous and hazardous conditions of troubled buildings. Some of these activities can include connecting the affected residents to critical housing services, administering relocation assistance to displaced individuals, and many other efforts. Additionally, the required assistance to residents includes, but is not exclusive to, the distribution of emergency housing payments, replacement unit identification, payment of move-in or security deposit fees and application fees, case management, and payment of moving expenses. Next slide, please. The tacit program is designed to meet a DOH objective by funding programs that serve a critical need in the city of Chicago and is intended for agencies that hold expertise in an area connected to housing. Organizations selected for this program will have to work closely with the assigned DOH staff member to determine the program metrics and deliverables for the year. Once those metrics are set, organizations will be monitored against those goals. All tacit delegate agencies are subject to quarterly reporting, and depending on the program, may have to produce their deliverables and toolkits by the end of the year along with their reports. Tacit is funded using City of Chicago corporate funds, and CDBG is not used. However, DOH reserves the right to request client-level data from participating organizations to ensure that marginalized people are being provided services. Next slide, please. Now we can open up for our question and answer session for the tacit RFP. Please use the raise hand function and wait for us to call on you.
Okay, the first hand I see up is Sylvia. So you now have the ability to unmute and ask your question.
Hey, our organization is already funded through the Department of Housing for eviction defense through the Right to Counsel program. But we also provide a lot of legal services that have their nexus in eviction prevention and really center on eviction. So we're wondering if those kinds of cases would fall under the legal services category in this RFP.
Sure.
Cases to do with lockouts and stuff like that.
Sure, thank you. Heather, if you want to toggle back to the eligible activities page. It's slide 62, thank you. So yes, Sylvia, thank you for your question. That would be a eligible activity covered under the tacit model. You can also refer to the RFP for a full detailed guideline on what is exactly covered and what's not.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the next person I have is Julie. So Julie, you are now able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Great, thank you. I have a question about the supportive housing services and advocacy for marginalized people activity. And I wanted to see if for this activity, if an applying organization has to provide all of those pieces, the housing related services information, or if it could be, or if they can apply for providing one of those pieces only, like for example, the information or advocacy only.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for your question, Julie. Heather, if you can toggle forward one page. Oh, sorry, one more page forward. All righty. So to answer your question, Julie, yes. So the required assistance can include direct supportive services, but also it can include advocacy. This can be in the form of application assistance or anything to prevent housing instability. And again, you can go into details on what that may look like for your organization in your RFP application. Does that answer your question?
I was somewhat, I was also curious if this includes like system level advocacy or system change pieces, or really direct services only.
Sure. If you want, you can ask a more detailed question to our DOH community programs at cityofchicago.org and provide a little more context on maybe what that looks like, and we can get back to you with a more detailed answer.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so the last hand I see right now is David. So David, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I also had a question about the supportive housing services and advocacy for marginalized people category. And, you know, in particular, if it includes situations where you're not necessarily assisting with the application, but you're representing someone in a lawsuit based on, you know, discrimination, whether race, voucher status, criminal record, et cetera, whether that type of service is encompassed.
Sure. Thank you for your question, David. Again, I would direct you to asking, providing a little bit more context on specifically the work, if you have an example of a case, and sending that over in an email to DOH community programs at cityofchicago.org. And we can get back to you with a more detailed answer on whether it would fall under the supportive housing services model or under the legal services portion of the tacit programs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Esther. For a little bit more context, we have historically funded organizations for more advocacy, but then the requirement there from a programmatic standpoint ends up being, of course, that more community engagement, educational piece as well, and as well as client-specific assistance. So we've been able to do both under the tacit model. But yes, please send your further questions and we'll take a further look.
Okay, I see a question from Val. So I will, Val, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, so we organize community members, and one of the things that we've done in the past, and we've been very good at it, was create tenant associations and resident associations in South Shore. But we find that there's a need for senior resident associations where they're living in horrible conditions. Would this RFP cover something like that?
Thank you for your question, Val. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I do feel like we need a little bit more context on whether you're providing these services citywide or if it's specifically in South Shore. If you wouldn't mind shooting an email to DOH community programs at cityofchicago.org with a little more context on specifically the work that you do and the services that you provide, we can go ahead and kind of navigate from there.
Okay.
And one major point of clarification across the board, the technical assistance citywide program is intended to be able to do something of a technical assistance matter, whether it's through advocacy, case level services, legal representation, really to individuals across the citywide for a citywide benefit. We have other programs that are more community focused, but that one is not subject to the RFP this year. However, we anticipate rejoining the CDGA cycle that was mentioned earlier in this presentation for next year. So that will be available for the 2025 year.
Gotcha.
I do not see any other hands up. So I think we can probably move to our next section.
Okay, thank you so much for your questions. I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball over back to Esther Gutierrez to close us out.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention to today's presentations. I'm going to go ahead and close us out today. If you can advance to the next slide. As a reminder, the 3 programs which will be available to bid for this fiscal year, 2024 only, will be the Housing Counseling Centers, the Small Accessible Repair for Seniors, and the Technical Assistance Citywide program only. An important note, the Technical Assistance Community Housing Development Organization, and the Historic Chicago Bungalow Association will not be part of this bid, and we anticipate rejoining the previous aforementioned CDGH cycle for the next available opportunity for the 2025 year. Next slide, please. The following are recommended best practices when applying to the RFP opportunity. Your organization is at choice of whether or not you want to follow these best practices, but we do want to highlight a few of them. First being, keep your audience in mind rather than DOH. Keep your audience in mind, rather DOH in mind when you are applying to this. Review DOH's mission, vision, and values. Start early, submit early. Review all instructions carefully. Get to the point when you are responding to the questions. Work as a team. There's a lot of different components, and you may have to leverage other individuals in your organization for the documents. So make sure you are looking through that. Ensure the documents are legible and not outdated. Very specifically, if you are requesting, let's say, your program information, then we really should see some sort of time date that is within reason, rather than from like 10 years ago. Double check to ensure all questions are answered, and double check to ensure all your documents are uploaded. Specifically, also, if we are asking, for example, for the quality assurance and procedures, please go ahead and rename that file so we know what we're looking at as well. Next slide. As a reminder, there are several key dates you must reach to successfully apply to this opportunity. We are putting great emphasis on the due date for RFP applications. Once the application window closes, DOH cannot accept your application. Score your application or extend any funding through this available opportunity. Meaning, if you do not apply on or before the actual timestamp, then the application will not go through. We will not see it. We do not have the authority to look at it or review it or score it or extend any award. Next slide. For up-to-date information on DOH, you can follow us on our different social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, or X. The handles are on the screen. Next slide. We have reached the end of today's technical assistance webinar for DOH SARESI request for funding proposal opportunity for HCC, SARS, and TACIT programs. We do thank you for joining us today. And as a reminder, we will be publishing the presentation slides, the questions and answers, and a video of today's recording in approximately 1 week of today's presentation. We will send out the email with all this information to all the registrants for today's presentation. If you have any further questions after today's presentations, please send them via email only at dohcommunityprograms@cityofchicago.org. To ensure a fair and transparent process, we will not be accepting any questions through our own City of Chicago emails or via phone, and we have to direct you to the DOH Community Programs @cityofchicago.org email addresses. Due to the volume of questions that we receive, all questions must be submitted by no later than September 27th, 2023 at noon Central Standard Time. That is 1 business day before the due date. DOH and us here at SARESI, we cannot guarantee that we will be able to take or answer any questions the day the application is due or the date after the September 27th noon deadline. We once again thank you for joining today. We will be following up in approximately a week or less with all the materials, and everyone have a wonderful afternoon.